The sky above the mining colony was always gray, filled with dust and smoke from the machines digging deep into the planet's core. Callan, a human engineer, walked alone through the wreckage of a crashed alien ship on the edge of the restricted zone. He wasn't supposed to be here, but curiosity always got the better of him. The crash had happened 2 days ago, and no one had claimed the wreck. It looked old, broken, and burned. But something pulled him closer every time he passed it. Today he heard something different, a soft, almost painful sound, a whimper. Callan froze. He slowly turned off his flashlight and crouched behind a broken wing of the alien ship. The sound came again. He moved carefully through twisted metal and blackened panels. Listening, then he saw her. A small figure curled behind a pile of debris, shaking. Her skin glowing faint blue even in the dim light. She looked like a teenage girl, but not human alien. With soft patterns across her skin and large glowing eyes full of fear. She wore torn clothing, and her back was pressed against a cracked panel. When she saw him, she tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Callan raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said in a soft voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't speak. She just stared at him, breathing fast, her body trembling. He noticed a large lump on her back, just below her left shoulder blade. Hidden partly under her torn clothes, it was round, tight under the skin, and it pulsed slightly like something alive inside. Callan's eyes widened, but he didn't move closer. He knew enough about alien biology to understand. This could be dangerous, but he couldn't leave her here, not like this. With quick thinking, Callan wrapped her in a thermal blanket from his toolkit and lifted her gently into his arms. She was light, too light, and burning with fever. He carried her through the dark tunnel back to his hidden quarters on the edge of the base. Inside his room, he placed her carefully on the bed and locked the door. She looked around, weak but alert, her glowing eyes watching every move he made. "I'll help you," he whispered. "Just stay calm." He tried to scan her body using his portable medical scanner, but the moment he pointed it at the lump, the scanner glitched and turned off. The girl tensed, her hand reaching out to push him away. He backed off immediately. Okay, I won't touch it," he said gently. She relaxed slightly, but didn't take her eyes off him. Callan made her drink some water and gave her a nutrient bar. She ate slowly, her hands shaking, eyes still locked on him like a frightened animal. Hours passed, and the base outside remained silent. No one knew he had brought an alien into his room. It was against every rule in the colony. Aliens were to be reported, captured, or avoided, never protected. But Callan didn't care. She was alone, scared, and clearly hurt. She needed help. Not prison. As night fell, Callan sat by her side, watching the strange lump on her back move slightly now and then. Was it part of her? Or something else? She had not spoken a single word, not even a sound since the crash site. But there was something intelligent in her eyes, something more than fear. He felt a strange connection to her, a need to protect her. Even if he didn't understand why suddenly, she reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm, soft, and slightly glowing. Then for the first time she whispered a single word. "Run!" Callan blinked. "What do you mean?" he asked, leaning forward. The girl looked past him, eyes wide in terror. Before he could turn around, a loud metallic sound echoed from outside his door. Someone or something was coming, and the lump on her back began to glow brighter, pulsing faster, as if it was reacting to danger. Callan stood up quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. The alien girl gripped his wrist tightly, and her eyes, full of fear, locked onto his. "Don't let them take me," she said in a soft, shaky voice. Callan locked the door quickly, his hand shaking as he stared at the girl on the bed. Her glowing skin flickered like fading firelight, and the strange lump on her back pulsed again, more violently now. He had seen many things during his time on the edge of space. Explosions, strange minerals, even alien creatures. But nothing like this. The girl, this alien girl, was something different. Something alive and silent. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't run. She simply watched. Watched him, watched the door, watched everything like her life depended on it. The pounding outside the door stopped suddenly. Only the hum of the base systems and Callan's nervous breathing filled the air. He turned toward her, kneeling down. "What is that thing in your back?" he whispered. "Is it hurting you?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, she slowly sat up and pointed at his tablet lying on the table. He handed it to her, unsure what she would do. With shaking fingers, she began drawing. Her hand moved in soft circles, then long lines. Then sharp symbols he didn't recognize. She drew a picture of a planet split in half. She drew people, her people, running, hiding, crying, and in the center of it all, she drew the lump inside her back, glowing like a sun. Then she looked up at Callan, her eyes heavy with sadness. That thing inside me, she said slowly, struggling with each word. It, not ready. Yet Callan swallowed hard. He didn't fully understand, but he got the message. Whatever was inside her, it was important and dangerous. He asked softly, "Can I give you a name? Something to call you?" She blinked slowly, then nodded once. "Lyra," Callan said after thinking for a moment. "Your name is Lyra." She stared at him for a long second, then whispered it back. Lyra, it felt right. Even if it wasn't her real name, it belonged to her now, Lyra. Callan stood up and walked to the far corner of the room, where he kept an old medical scanner, mostly used for mining accidents. He aimed it at Lyra, hoping the scanner wouldn't fail like the last one. The machine beeped twice, then buzzed and died instantly. Smoke drifted from the side. Lyra winced. Callan backed off. "Okay," he said gently, raising both hands. "No more scanners." Lyra curled up again on the bed. Hugging her knees, the room fell silent again. But it wasn't peaceful. Something was building in the air. Tension, heat, energy. That night, while Lyra slept, Callan couldn't rest. He opened his old communication terminal and sent a private signal through a hidden channel. Only one person could understand what he was seeing, Dr. Misha, an exobiologist who had disappeared years ago after breaking research rules on alien DNA. If anyone could help now, it was her. He uploaded a picture of the strange lump and explained everything, where he found the girl, what he saw, and what he feared. Then he waited. Hours passed. Lyra slept, but her body kept glowing, the lump on her back shifting slightly like something moving inside. The message from Misha arrived just before dawn. One sentence: "That's not a disease, Callan. It's a bioorganic seal. Ancient tech, maybe a weapon. Maybe a living core." Callan stared at the screen, his heart racing. A weapon? Inside her? He looked over at Lyra, who stirred under the blanket and opened her glowing eyes. She whispered something again. "Seed." Callan walked over slowly, sitting at the edge of the bed. "What do you mean, seed?" he asked. Lyra drew another small shape on the tablet, something like a flower, something small and full of light. "Planted in me, one to keep safe," she said. Then with deep fear in her voice, she added, "They want it back." A cold chill ran through Callan's body. Who were they? He heard the buzz of movement outside his room again. Someone was watching him. He moved to the small hidden panel in his wall, checking the cameras he installed secretly months ago. 3 men from base security stood near his door, pretending to talk, but their eyes kept glancing toward his number. They knew something. They were getting ready to come in. Callan turned off the screen and looked back at Lyra. "We have to leave," he said firmly, "now." She stood slowly, weaker than before, but her eyes were stronger, more alert, more focused as they prepared to escape. Callan packed a few supplies, tools, and his old rifle. Lyra placed a hand on the door, and suddenly it clicked softly, unlocked by her touch. She looked back at Callan and said one more thing, this time clear and calm. "Inside me is a warning." The tunnel was cold, narrow, and full of dust. Callan led the way, flashlight in one hand and a portable heat scanner in the other. Lyra walked quietly behind him, her soft footsteps barely making a sound. The lump on her back was glowing again, faint but steady. They had escaped the base just before security arrived, using an old maintenance shaft Callan had found years ago. It was risky, but it was the only way. Now they were hiding below the colony, in the forgotten lower levels, dark, rusty, and full of secrets. Callan stopped near an old control panel covered in dust. He wiped it off and connected his wrist pad to it, bringing the system back to life. The screen blinked, showing a weak signal. "Good," Callan muttered. "I can send a deeper scan to Dr. Misha from here." He turned to Lyra, who was watching him silently. Her skin was dimmer now, but her eyes were sharper, full of something he couldn't describe, fear and power. "Both mixed together. I'm going to try again," he said gently. "Just one quick scan of the thing on your back." Lyra hesitated, then nodded slowly. He activated a low-frequency scanner, this time using an older model with no AI restrictions. It beeped once and began scanning the lump. The data came through slowly, lines of alien symbols, Foreign patterns, heat waves, and a strange signal repeating inside the lump. The device suddenly buzzed and stopped. Kalen stared at the screen, eyes wide. There was a code inside the lump, repeating again and again in a language no one used anymore. Ancient, forgotten, pre-galactic. This isn't just tech, he whispered. It's a memory bank. He saved the data and sent it to Dr. Misha through a back channel, labeling it as Biocore Type Z, hoping it wouldn't be flagged by base systems. They had only a few minutes before the signal was traced. While waiting, Lyra sat beside a rusted pipe, her arms around her knees. She looked tired but calm. Do you remember anything? Kalen asked softly. Lyra looked at him, then slowly nodded. Flashes, she said, her voice low. Big ship, many stars, cold air, then pain, screaming, and light. She touched the lump on her back gently. They put it inside. Said to protect it. Even if I forget, Kalen frowned. Who are they? He asked. Your people? She shook her head. Not mine, she whispered. The ones before me. They created us. To carry the seed. Before Kalen could ask more, his wrist pad beeped, a message from Dr. Misha, short and urgent. Kalen, listen to me. This is not a seed, it's a key. You've found one of the vessels. They were hidden after the collapse the last time this key was used. It destroyed an entire star system. You need to hide her now, or they'll come for her. Kalen's blood went cold. He looked at Lyra, who had gone quiet again. A key? Not a weapon, not a disease, not a crystal. A key to something ancient and powerful, and deadly. The old stories spoke of the collapse, a time when unknown forces wiped out entire civilizations. No one ever proved they were real, but if Lyra was telling the truth, if Misha was right, then the collapse was no myth, and Lyra carried a part of it. Kalen disconnected his pad and stood up. We have to move again, he said quickly. They might trace the signal. Lyra stood, her legs trembling. As they made their way deeper into the tunnels, Kalen whispered to her. Why didn't they destroy the key? Lyra answered softly. Because it opened something they were afraid to lose. They reached a small storage chamber where old mining bots were once kept. It was dark, quiet, forgotten. Kalen locked the door and sealed it from inside. Just in case, he sat down against the wall, breathing hard, his head filled with questions. Why was the key hidden inside a girl? Why were soldiers coming for her? What would happen if it activated? He looked at Lyra again, small, glowing, innocent, and dangerous. She was more than just a passenger. She was a message, a warning, and maybe a beginning. Suddenly, Lyra gasped, her body shaking. The lump on her back started glowing again, faster, stronger. She fell to her knees. Eyes wide in pain, Kalen rushed to her side, holding her shoulders. Lyra, what's happening? She looked at him, her face pale. They're close, she whispered. The ones who want the key, they found us. The old storage room smelled of rust, oil, and forgotten time. Kalen held Lyra close as she trembled in his arms, her skin glowing brighter than ever. The lump on her back pulsed like a heartbeat, sending out a low hum that vibrated through the metal walls. They're close, she whispered again, her voice thin. I can feel them. Kalen looked around quickly. Mind racing, there were no weapons here, no backup. No way out unless they ran back into the open tunnels. And that was suicide. But staying meant capture. And if what Dr. Misha said was true, capture meant something worse than death. He reached for his old wristcom and pulled up the local map of the underground grid. There was an emergency shaft nearby, built for mining teams to escape cave-ins. It was tight, vertical, and old, but it led to the surface. Behind the western ridge of the base, we're getting out of here, Kalen said firmly. Now, Lyra nodded slowly, still weak, but her legs moved. They stepped into the side corridor, moving quickly, shadows dancing under their feet. As they turned the corner, Kalen stopped, his stomach sinking. 3 figures in black armor stood at the far end, rifles raised, base soldiers, not regular security, but internal threat units. The kind sent for one thing, containment and removal. Stop right there. One of the men shouted, voice cold and sharp. You are harboring a hostile biological life form. She's not hostile, Kalen yelled back, shielding Lyra behind him. She's hurt. She needs help. The soldier stepped forward, visor glowing red. That's not your decision, he said. Step aside or you will be neutralized. Lyra gripped Kalen's hand tightly, shaking her head. No, they lie. They want the key, she whispered. Callan knew there was no chance of talking his way out of this. He had only one move left. He reached behind his jacket, pulled out a small EMP grenade and threw it. The flash was instant. Electric sparks exploded down the hallway, lights popping and comms dying. The soldiers' visors blinked out as their systems crashed. "Run!" Callan shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm and sprinting toward the emergency shaft. They reached the steel hatch and Callan yanked it open, cold air rushing out from the narrow tunnel below. He pushed Lyra inside first, then followed, sealing the hatch behind them. As they climbed up the old ladder, the entire shaft echoed with the sound of metal creaking and warning sirens from the base. "They'll send drones," Callan muttered, breathing hard. "We need to hide fast." When they reached the surface, the world outside was dark, dry, and filled with winds. The western ridge gave them cover, a deep canyon that few miners ever visited. Callan helped Lyra down and found a shallow cave at the base of the rocks. They crawled inside, breathless, covered in dirt and sweat. For now they were safe, but not for long. Lyra sat down, eyes closed, the lump on her back glowing so bright now that it lit the cave walls. "Lyra," Callan said, wiping blood from his forehead. "What is this key? Why do they want it so badly?" She opened her eyes slowly, and this time there was no fear in them, only memory. "The key. It opens something ancient," she said, "a gate, to a place where my creators sealed their last power." "Power?" Callan asked. "Like a weapon?" "Not just weapon," Lyra whispered. "Knowledge, light, and destruction." Callan sat down beside her, stunned. "You mean it's real? All those old stories about the collapse? The hidden technology?" Lyra nodded once. "My people were not soldiers," she said. "We were carriers, vessels scattered across space, to hide the keys." Callan looked outside the cave, watching the red dust blow across the land. He suddenly felt small, like a tiny piece in a game he didn't understand. The colony was just one place, one rock in the galaxy, but the thing inside Lyra, it was connected to something far bigger, something older than human history. "What happens if they take it?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra looked down at her hands, which were glowing softly now. "If they take it," she said, "they will open the gate again, and no world will be safe." Silence filled the cave, heavy and cold outside. A soft buzzing sound began, barely heard at first, but growing louder. Callan looked up sharply. "Drones," he whispered. "They found us." He grabbed his rifle and turned to Lyra. "You need to run, hide, do whatever you can." But Lyra didn't move. Instead, she stood up, light pouring from her back, her eyes now glowing pure white. "Enough running," she said calmly. "They want the key." She turned toward the mouth of the cave, facing the red sky where the drones approached. "They can come and try," she whispered, "but I won't be taken again." The drones came fast, dark metal shapes cutting through the red sky like blades. Callan stood at the cave entrance, rifle in hand, heart pounding behind him. Lyra stood tall, her back glowing brighter than ever, the strange lump pulsing like a second heart. The sound of the drones grew louder, buzzing, scanning, hunting. Callan had seen these machines before, used to track fugitives or dangerous creatures. But this time they were here for something much worse. They weren't here to question, they were here to take. 3 drones hovered over the canyon, lights blinking, weapons charging. One of them projected a voice, deep and cold. "Surrender the vessel, step away from the subject, or you will be eliminated." Callan didn't move. He stepped in front of Lyra and aimed his rifle, even though he knew it would do nothing. "She's not a subject," he shouted. "She's not a weapon. She's a living being." The drone repeated the warning. This time louder. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her eyes glowing pure white. "I told you," she said in a calm voice. "I will not be taken again." The drones fired. 3 sharp beams of blue light shot toward her chest, but they never reached. Just before the beams hit her, the lump on her back burst open, not with blood, not with pain, but with light, blinding. Golden white light exploded from her back, filling the cave and the sky above it. It spread like a wave, pushing through the air like a living force. The drones froze, their systems crashing instantly. Their lights flickered, sparks flew from their sides, and one by one, they dropped to the ground like broken toys. Callan covered his eyes, unable to see. He felt heat, pressure, and something deeper, a strange hum in his bones, like the light was not just bright, but alive. When the light faded, Lyra was still standing, but now something floated behind her, a glowing orb spinning gently in the air. surrounded by alien symbols made of light. The orb turned slowly and spoke, not with sound, but straight into Callan's mind. She is the vessel, touch her again. And your minds will burn. The words weren't angry, but powerful. They echoed inside his skull like thunder. Then the orb pulsed once more and melted back into Lyra's body. Disappearing into her spine, Lyra fell to her knees, breathing hard, her eyes dim again. Callan rushed to her side, catching her before she collapsed. "Lyra, are you okay?" he asked, panicked. She nodded slowly, her voice weak. "I remember now. I remember who I am." Callan held her gently, heart racing. "What do you mean?" he asked. "What was that thing?" Lyra looked up, her face pale but peaceful. That was the key. "It's awake now." She sat up, steadier this time, and placed her hand on the ground from her touch. Glowing lines formed in the dirt. Alien patterns, a map, maybe even coordinates. "It was never just about hiding the key," she said. "It was about protecting what it opens." Callan looked at the glowing shapes on the ground. "What does it open?" he asked, barely breathing. She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly once again. "A gate," she said. "A path to the last memory of my creators, their legacy, their final hope, and their final warning." The wind blew across the canyon again. Colder now, sharper. Callan felt like the air itself had changed. "You said others like you were sent across the galaxy," he asked. "Does that mean there are more vessels?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, we were scattered, each one carrying a different key. Each one waiting for the right moment to awaken." Callan stood slowly, looking toward the distant mountains. "Then this is just the beginning," he said quietly. Lyra placed her hand on his arm. "You saved me," she said softly, when no one else would, before Callan could answer. A sharp tone echoed from his wrist pad. He checked it quickly. Base alert, level red. More troops were coming, heavier forces this time. "They're not giving up," he said. "They'll keep coming until they get what they want." Lyra stood again, her body now glowing with steady light, stronger than before. "Then we must go to the gate," she said, "before they do." Callan nodded. Gripping his rifle tight, the war hadn't started yet. But the pieces were moving, and now Lyra wasn't just a silent passenger. She was something greater, a force with a memory, and the galaxy was about to remember what it once feared. The stars above the canyon were no longer quiet. They blinked strangely now, as if watching, waiting, warning. Callan and Lyra moved fast through the rocky hills, following the glowing symbols only she could see. Each step took them closer to something ancient, something long forgotten. The base behind them had gone silent, but not safe. The red alert was still active. And more soldiers were coming, smarter ones with heavier weapons and zero mercy. Lyra no longer walked like someone afraid. She moved with purpose, her glowing skin lighting the path even in the darkest corners of the night. The key inside her had changed everything. She remembered now not just her name but her mission, and the thing she had to reach before the wrong hands opened the gate. As they crossed into the jagged hills near the old meteor impact site, Callan finally asked the question burning in his mind. "Lyra, where is this gate you're taking us to? Is it a weapon, a ship?" Lyra shook her head slowly, her voice calm but distant. "No, it's not a weapon, it's a memory. A message left behind by the first ones, my creators. They saw what was coming. They saw the hunger in the stars." "Hunger?" Callan asked, confused. She turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. "There's something out there, something ancient. Something that feeds on knowledge. It erases civilizations, burns history, and leaves nothing but silence." Callan felt a chill deep in his bones. "You're talking about the collapse, aren't you?" he whispered. Lyra nodded. It wasn't just war, it was cleansing entire worlds. Forgotten, as they climbed the last ridge. Callan looked up and froze. There, in the valley below, was a massive structure buried under dust and rock. Half-circle in shape, tall like a mountain, but smooth, too smooth, the gate. It looked like a wound in the planet's skin. Silent and sealed for centuries, Lyra raised her hand, and the symbols on her arm lit up. As she stepped closer, the structure responded, glowing softly as if recognizing her. "This is where it all began," she whispered. "And where it will begin again." Suddenly, the sky above them shifted. Bright lines tore through the clouds, ships. Not from the colony, not human, and not hers. Callan grabbed his scope and zoomed in. 3 black triangular ships with red underlights drifted silently above the atmosphere. "They don't look friendly," he muttered. "They're not," Lyra said. "They are the hunters. The ones who serve the hunger." They followed the signal when the key awakened. Callan cursed under his breath. "Can the gate protect us?" he asked. "It can do more than that," Lyra said. "It can send a warning to others like me. Across the galaxy, if the message reaches them in time, we won't be alone." She walked to the base of the gate and placed her hand on a circular panel. The entire structure lit up, lines of alien code racing across its surface like fire. The ground shook gently as if the planet itself remembered. A deep hum echoed in the air, and a soft voice, ancient and layered, filled the valley. Vessel recognized, initiating memory stream. "Prepare for transmission." Light exploded upward from the gate, forming a beam that shot straight into the sky. It pierced the clouds, rising higher and higher until it touched the stars. The ships above paused, almost uncertain. Then the beam split, sending pulses in all directions across the galaxy. Like ripples in a great ocean, Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted, her body flickering like a fading signal. Callan ran to her side and held her close. "Did it work?" he asked softly. "Did they hear it?" Lyra smiled weakly. "They did," she said. "The others. They're waking up now. We're not alone anymore." The sky flashed again, this time not with enemy ships but with answers. Other beams of light began blinking back from distant stars, one by one, like stars remembering their names. The gate had done its job, but the danger wasn't over. The enemy ships began to descend now, slow and silent, like vultures circling a wounded prey. "They're coming," Callan said. Lifting his rifle again, Lyra stood weak but steady. "Let them come," she said. "This time we're ready." The sky had turned red, not from the sun, but from fire in the clouds. The 3 black alien ships moved slowly through the sky like giants made of shadow. They gave no warning, no message, no demand. They had followed the signal from the key, and now they had come to erase what they feared. Callan stood on the edge of the valley, his rifle shaking in his hands. But it wasn't fear that made him tremble. It was the weight of something bigger than war. Beside him, Lyra stood tall, her eyes glowing white, her skin covered in lines of light. The gate behind her had finished sending its message, but now its surface began to change. Pieces of it floated up into the air, reshaping, spinning around Lyra like armor. Not made of metal, but of memory and energy. A crown of light settled over her head, and soft glowing wings spread from her back. The lump was gone now, replaced by something beautiful. The key had awakened her, and through her, something far greater had awakened too. Callan took a step back, eyes wide. "Lyra, what are you becoming?" he whispered. She looked at him with calm, ancient eyes. "I was a vessel," she said softly. "Now I am a messenger. The first ones left us not just to carry, but to rise." When the enemy returned, the sky crackled as energy beams from the enemy ships began to charge. A low, deep sound shook the valley, a sound that felt like the beginning of the end. "They're preparing to strike," Callan said, raising his rifle out of instinct. Even though he knew it would be useless, Lyra stepped forward, her glowing feet lifting slightly off the ground. "I will not let them erase this world," she said. Not like they did before. She flew upward, slow and steady, rising toward the sky like a rising star. As she moved, the sky above shimmered, and from distant corners of space, lights began to appear one by one. Other beams responded, signals from other vessels, other messengers. The key had worked. She had called them, and they were answering. But time was short. One of the enemy ships fired. A huge blast of red energy ripped through the sky. Heading straight toward the gate, Callan shouted, "Lyra!" But before the blast hit, Lyra raised her hand and the blast stopped. Not slowed, stopped completely, frozen in the air like a paused video. She turned it into light and scattered it into dust. The ground below shook from the force, but no harm was done. The enemy ships paused, confused. Then they all fired at once. 3 full strikes of burning death shot down from the sky. Lyra's wings expanded, her body spinning in the air. A shield of white light burst around the valley, absorbing the blasts like a wall of stars. Callan fell to the ground, shielding his eyes from the brightness. When he looked up, Lyra was no longer alone in the sky. All around her, others had arrived. Alien forms with glowing skin, wings of crystal, eyes of light, each one a vessel awakened by the message from the gate. They floated beside her like a forgotten army of stars. Together they formed a ring above the valley. Blocking out the enemy ships one by one, they raised their hands, and from their palms came beams of soft white energy, not to destroy, but to purify. The black ships trembled, their armor cracking, their red lights fading. The shadows that had once fed on knowledge now twisted, screamed, and vanished into the sky like smoke. It was not war, it was remembrance. The first ones had returned, not in flesh, but in spirit, through their children, through Lyra. When the battle was over, and the last black ship vanished into the stars, the sky grew quiet again. The other messengers bowed their heads, then disappeared, fading into the stars like they were never there. Only Lyra remained, slowly drifting down to the earth. Her wings dimmed, her crown faded. Kaelin ran to her side, catching her before she fell. She looked up at him and smiled. "It's over," she whispered. For now, Kaelin held her tightly, not as a protector anymore, but as someone who had witnessed something greater than history. "What will you do now?" he asked. Lyra looked at the sky, then at him. "I'll stay," she said. "This planet has people who still remember what it means to care. To protect, like you did." She placed her hand on his chest, and for a moment he felt warmth deep inside his heart. "You changed my path," she said. "Now I will help change yours." As the sun rose over the canyon, painting the land gold, Callan stood beside the girl who once carried a mystery. Now she carried hope in the stars. "We're no longer silent. The end